Welcome back to the SportsMax Zone. We turn our attention to football. The Jamaica Football Federation, JFF, is to submit this week a proposal to the health authorities detailing the steps they intend to take to restart the game in the country. In an article carried in the Gleaner newspaper, JFF President Michael Ricketts said, "There is a document right now that is being prepared by a committee that was set up specially for this purpose. They have drafted a proposal in detail on how we can start the new football season in a safe manner. We have handed it over to our medical team for their approval, and after that, then it will be over to the Ministry of Health." Ricketts is also quoted as saying, "Having been a part of club management, I understand what these clubs are facing right now. And we as the JFF must, as best as possible, make it feasible for these clubs to remain viable. We are in uncharted waters, and the JFF must make adjustments to facilitate and ensure that we make life easier for the clubs." JFF boss Michael Ricketts was heavily criticized over the decision to cancel all football amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Many felt the decision was premature and arbitrary. Lance, you remember when we had Michael Ricketts on the show, as well as Carvel Stewart, and of course they were back and forth discussing that decision to cancel football across in Jamaica, and a lot of tension, because what I got from the discussion is that there was not no sort of mutual agreement. It's as if, one person made the decision.
Well, to be fair to Michael Ricketts, when he had presented his position, he did mention different sections of the stakeholders that were a part of the decision. I think Carvel Stewart's problem was that they were not interactive enough with the PLCA and the clubs that were involved. And to be fair to Carvel's argument, what he was saying on that afternoon when he was on the SportsMax Zone was not so much that the season should have been cancelled.
Shouldn't have been.
Yeah, shouldn't have been cancelled, but why make the decision so hastily?
Yeah.
He felt, and I think there was good reason for him to feel that way, that in all that was happening, there was still time for them to see, after 6 weeks, 7 weeks, maybe 2 months, if it would be possible in different circumstances to get a completion of the season, because this had happened way back in March, and the season, as we see in Europe now, and the new season of any Premier League season starting in September, there was still time for them to at least study the possibility. And that I agreed with the PLC on that point, that the JFF was hasty in making the decision, not that the decision to cancel the season was an incorrect one.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you there, because here's the thing. Hindsight is always 2020. And now we can look back and we can say that it was a hasty decision. But we must remember, the decision of the JFF was guided by the science. I'm sounding like a British politician now, who keeps saying that on TV every morning.
Because that's what you listen to all day. So.
It was guided by the science, yes? And at the time, Lance and Mariah, and my viewers, and our viewers, there was a concern from the perspective of the persons in the medical field, of whether there was any chance of a community spread of COVID-19. Now, because of this fear about whether there was a community spread of COVID-19, remember that this was around the time that a section of a parish, Bull Bay in St. Andrew, 9 miles, everybody there was quarantined into one huge quarantine zone. There was also an issue of a journalist getting in there to work, because it was felt that any possibility was possible in that zone. And so a journalist going out there and coming back out, going into a newsroom, was a potential hazard to the journalist's health and the health of those persons who he or she would interact with back at base. So it was at this time that there wasn't the certainty that, all right, we have controlled community spread as long as we intercept people who come into the island from overseas, test them, impose government quarantine on them, or mandate them to quarantine at home so that we can control community spread. there was not that certainty, and the government has done very well in preventing community spread in Jamaica so far. And look from back when COVID-19 was declared a pandemic, and to this date, knock on any wood you can find, there's wood somewhere here, there has been no community spread just yet. So they weren't sure about that at the time. They were scared about that possibility. They didn't want a fan to go to a football game, sit in the stands, and cause a spread. They didn't want a player to go to a game and infect 22 players on the field, those on the bench, the officials, the commentators, Lance and George, and everybody connected with SportsMax who's broadcasting the games potentially and would interview people after. So it was a lot of an abundance of caution that the decision was taken. I can empathize with Carville. I heard his pain when George stayed with Lance that day.
But George, you are empathizing with their decision to not to call off the season.
Exactly.
The issue was not that the season shouldn't have been called off, but there was no need at that point.
No, but I'm saying to you that I agree with them. I agree with them that at the time it was needful to move decisively, because guess what? You can deal with the collateral damage of lost sponsorship and so forth after the fact. How would you reconcile the loss of lives and livelihoods if you had gone ahead, there was a community spread, and you had compromised the health and well-being of the players and their families and the communities in which they are? That's what prompted the decision by the JFF, consulting with health experts who told them that, look, we don't know. There are known knowns and known unknowns and unknown knowns.
Yes, so
let's call it off.
Jordan, but the point, just before you say that, Mariah, I just want to say that at that point, what the PLC is saying is that there can be no football anytime soon.
Exactly.
So that is what the argument is. Not that the season is cancelled. There can't be any football anytime soon. Maybe in July, we can look back at it again.
Lance, there has to be a terminal nature to a decision like that. You have to either postpone to a date or you cancel. Why is it that the Olympics, although I know it's a different scale, but the Olympics goes along the way that these things should go, where there's a decision and a date is communicated. So, all right, gentle people, we're not going to have the Olympics in the summer of 2020. We're going to go to the summer of 2021, and the dates are announced swiftly. For the JFF, from the JFF's perspective, they couldn't say, you know what, let's shut it down for 3 weeks and see what happens after. No, they had to make a terminal decision, and I'm saying it's all well and good to say that they acted hastily, but given the guidance from those who are medical experts, I'm sure, Lance, if you were Michael Ricketts and company, and you were advised by a health expert in epidemiology and related things to shut this thing down now to prevent the worst happening, you'd have done the same.
No, but then it brings into question, maybe they needed to check some other health experts. JFF, because looking on at what's happening in the world, George, they literally canceled the season without even monitoring what was going on, and I think that is the issue that we're having.
I'll say this to you, my friend. France's Liga did the same thing. They did it in Holland as well. So I'm saying that mature football jurisdictions, France, one of the top 5 leagues in Europe, they did the same thing. Whereas Germany and England and Spain and Italy resumed, France pulled the plug. There was a court matter because there were a couple of teams who were relegated who felt that they were not given a chance to fight relegation properly. Lyon sued because Lyon challenged the decision because they felt that they were denied Champions League football and they lost. So I'm saying Amiens was relegated as a result. So I'm saying that mature jurisdictions acted in a swift manner, decisive manner like the JFF did, and I can't find any basis to fault the decision made by Ricketts and company at the time. I know that it's easy to kick the JFF, but on this course, on this matter, I'm supporting them.
So now I'm even thinking, if they had to restart football, where do they get the sponsors? Are they going to have a struggle to get sponsors moving forward?
Well, there's always a struggle for that, right, Lance?
Yeah, there is. But George, I'm still going back to what you said.
I know you're still going back.
I
know you're still going back.
I'm agreeing with you that the right decision, I'm going to use your words now, was to shut down the season, which is what they did. Now, shutting down the season and cancelling the season, they are two different things.
Lance.
Because they shut down the season with good reason, and I have no difficulty with it. Let me add, George, that even now in July, I'm not sure if they should restart the season based on what is happening, because I don't think people should take COVID-19 lightly. I'm just saying that there was time for them to assess, even a month, 2 months, to assess the possibility of completing the season, which they didn't give themselves the opportunity to do.
Lance, it's a kind of intellectual arrogance that they weren't willing to use in that case. Because here's the thing, I'm saying again, I'm giving you the scenario, Mariah and Lance. You are the JFF. You are in a situation where this thing is declared a pandemic. You hear out of Europe that some of Europe's top 5 leagues, billion euro league or $1 billion leagues, are looking at cancelling the rest of the season.
Looking
And you
at the
go into panic mode?
At the time, you are monitoring. I'm not at the decision yet. By the time you are to make your decision, you make a call, put a call through to the health ministry. You ask to speak with the chief medical officer for health in Jamaica. Yes? You ask to speak with senior epidemiologists who track viruses and their spread and everything else. And they say to you, well, look, we are at a situation in this country where community spread is what we dread, because if the UK can be making an appeal to residents to stay home and shut down their country because they know that their hospital system will be overwhelmed, you can imagine what will happen in a country like Jamaica. So, our advice to you is this: lock down the league, cancel the league, because our advice to the Prime Minister in due course will be to issue a proclamation barring public gatherings. So even if you did not shut down and cancel the football season, you wouldn't be able to play football anyway, because that government edict is coming by way of proclamation. I'm sure that that's the guidance the JFF followed, because again, Lance, they didn't want to use arrogance to question what the medical professionals are saying. Because you know that in many cases, people get advice and they say, well, you know, I did some accounting when I was in high school, so I know about accounts, even if the accounts is not your specialty. You can't say you're an expert in medicine at any level, because medicine is a specialized field. Only a special and privileged few have the wisdom. The JFF was guided by the science, they were guided by the medical advice, and that is why they decided to cancel the season after announcing that it had been shut down.
I still think that based on the fluidity of the situation, it was done too quickly.
Fluidity of what, Mariah? What are you talking about?
COVID-19 pandemic.
Mariah, a pandemic is not fluid. There's no fluidity to a pandemic.
Things were happening, George. Like we weren't even sure. 1 minute the WHO was saying call it this, then we were changing.
Mariah, to be fair, Mariah, come on now. Mariah, it was after the pandemic was declared that they acted, and I'm saying, remember how I started? I said at the top that hindsight is 2020, and based on what we know now, when there has been no community spread in Jamaica, the league could have continued and been wrapped up, because it was close to the end anyway. But at the time, it was panic stations, and nobody wanted to defy what the medical advice was and potentially float what the government was handing down as a dictate, where public gatherings and the things such as outside physical activity was concerned.
What was the word you said? Panic what? Panic. You said panic something.
It was panic mode.
Yeah. Exactly. That is what it was. Did this
but it saved lives, Mariah. I'm sure it did.
I was just waiting for you to say one thing so I could say yes. Panic mode.
Yes.
Yeah, panic mode. So we go to break? Or Lance, do you want to argue with George some more?
No, I'm finished.
All right. Lance is done.
I know you missed me, eh?
Let's go to break.